Okay. Etienne de Boetie is the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation and the author of Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, where he is exposing how intergenerational organized crime runs the so-called government, the media, and academia. The thesis of this book is that government was never intended to protect life, liberty, and property, but is best thought of as a technique to rob and control populations. Absolutely. Mr. Boetie is a voluntarist and believes that everything government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market, mutual aid societies, nonprofits, and genuine charities. He is the editor of the Art of Liberty Daily News on Substack and 5 Meme Friday, which delivers hard-hitting, voluntarist memes and the best of the alternative media. So, without any further ado, there it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my special guest, Etienne de Boetie. Welcome to What on Earth is Happening.
It's good to be with you and your audience.
Excellent. So why don't you tell our viewing audience, if they're not familiar with your work, a little bit about your personal background and how you got started being a member of the so-called alternative media, what I call the true media, and let them know about how your work basically came to be.
Sure. I guess my background is I've had a really interesting background in getting to see the government up close and personal. In my youth, I ran a national third-party political campaign. I worked at one of the big 4 think tanks in Washington, D.C. I worked on Wall Street. I used to live outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia, where I was a member of Washington and Virginia and Maryland's largest CEO networking organization. And so I got to see the kind of government up close and personal. I've been a student of kind of what's been going on for 20 plus years. And the thesis of the book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, the subtitle is How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government, the Media, and Academia, is that government was never intended to protect life, liberty, and property, but it's best thought of as a technique to rob and control populations. And they get away with it because they're controlling the information that people receive about the legitimacy of government, about the necessity of having a government, about the desirability of having a government. And they're controlling this information through the mandatory government schools. So they're raising people up in this ideology of the state. And even if you went to a private school, that's got to be an accredited private school, and you've got to essentially teach the exact same thing. And so that's one aspect of how they control perception widely. But really the other aspect, and the key thing that we really expose and break down in the book, is that it's government and the media working together. And on the old media side, you got 6 monopoly media companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion that there's all these different newspapers and magazines and television shows and television networks and radio stations and radio networks and movie companies, but essentially they're all rolling up to 6 companies operating as a cartel. And that's kind of the old media side of newspapers and radio and television and cable networks and things of that nature. On the new media side, you've got about 3 to 4 dozen new media internet companies. These are search engines, video streaming sites, social media networks. So Google, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Disqus, that does comments on thousands of different websites. Snopes, Amazon streaming, Netflix streaming. I think you're getting an idea of the kind of companies that we're talking about. And these companies are the ones that have been caught, especially during the COVID, algorithmically censoring information on the DARPA internet. I say DARPA internet because The internet is a military network. It was developed by something called the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. And so they had that network for decades before they released it to the public. They'd already figured out which companies they needed to invest in and control. They provided certain companies with unlimited funds to be able to buy up and consolidate their competition so that they could control perception widely on this network. And these are the companies that I'm not just speculating, it is now kind of, out in the public after the release of the Twitter files when Elon Musk took over Twitter. He gave Matt Taibbi and other journalists access to the emails of the company. And what they discovered was that there was a network of around 50 different companies, some of them, associated with the government, some of them associated with institutions, non-government organizations, some of them academic, that were blacklisting and, having certain things blacklisted at Twitter. And so some of these techniques, they include deplatforming members of the alternative media. Facebook did this famously in 2018. They wiped out my Etienne de la Boetie Facebook account in May of 2018. They kicked off almost 300 people, and I think it was either September or October of 2018. They deplatformed somewhere around 900 different pages. So they took down pages of the Free Thought Project, the anti-media that had, in some cases, millions of followers.
And this was being done. This was being done in direct collusion with government intelligence agencies. Like, they were having meetings with them, commanding the members of Twitter to do this type of, absolute Soviet-style, Chinese, communist-style censorship of information and shutting down of dissenting political speech. And they just obeyed willingly. They just completely obeyed as if they were just another octopus tentacle of government, and went ahead and did the bidding of these, intelligence organizations gleefully, as a matter of fact.
Well, you're absolutely correct, but it's even more nefarious than that because, Mit Press News, as another example of this, has done a number of different exposés where when you take a look at the internal content moderation team at Facebook, there's it's almost, if it's not more than a dozen, it's somewhere around a dozen members of that content moderation team were already quote unquote ex-CIA employees.
Yep.
Now at Twitter, the same dynamic was also found. They've got another, expose on Twitter where it comes up that, over a dozen or somewhere around a dozen were ex-members of the FBI. And at TikTok, which is supposedly and constantly referred to as a Chinese, platform, there's over somewhere around a dozen or plus ex-members of the State Department. And so this censorship, happened, before it, became permanent. And I think it was already baked into these platforms.
Sure.
We're going to control content widely, to make government seem like it's legitimate, to make it, everybody think that, you're not a free human being that lives on the planet, but you're an American. And because of where you were born, because you were born on this side or that side of an imaginary, line, that owe half your income in overt taxes, covert taxes, and inflation to this organized crime system that's not only running game on you, but is engaged in something that is, government is not, it's not legitimate, it's not desirable, it's not necessary, it violates natural law. And so, if you're supporting government, you're essentially advocating violence on your friends, neighbors, and colleagues. You're saying, hey, this, we've just got to get this guy elected. It's so important. The Democrats say we got to get this guy elected so he can rob everybody and put these policies in. The Republicans say, no, you've got to support this guy. We got to get him elected so he can rob everybody and put these policies into perspective. And voluntarists are really the only ones that are saying, hey, why don't we not rob anybody? The world is a self-organizing place. It produces spontaneous order. Everything the government does besides risk redistribution would be done better, faster, cheaper by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by homeowners associations, by insurance companies, by co-ops, by non-government organizations, nonprofits, and genuine charities.
God forbid. How dare you advocate something that is nonviolent like that? How dare you advocate removing this violent mechanism from our society? I mean, how would we get things done without all of that violence in place? I mean, it's just unfathomable that anybody can think we can actually accomplish things as human beings in a non-violent capacity. I mean, but just imagine that this is what people advocate for still in our society today. They actually believe that all that coercion and violence is necessary. They actually look at it as necessary evil, as if any evil in our society should or must be necessary. This is how distorted the thinking that this mind control religion absolutely implants its devastating viruses of mental ideas into the population, and what absolute nonsense it gets people thinking through its totally adulterated, corrupted, and paid for media. Did your stream freeze up there, Etienne? You might need to come off and go back into the room. It looks like we have a frozen window. Hold on a moment. I apologize for that, folks. Give me a moment to try to fix that. All right.
Am I back?
Yes, there you go. It looks like you your internet connection may have dropped there.
So what I was
there you go.
So what I was saying. So what I was saying is that you are absolutely correct, and one of the things that we expose in the book in a very kind of graphic way, the book is filled with historical images and visualizations. Tell people the name of this book and like when it was published and how they could go about getting it, because this is phenomenal. Everybody should have a copy of this thing. So it's government, the biggest scam in history. It's at government-scam.com, government-scam.com. But one of the things that we expose in the book is that they're sliding the population, a belief in government, to your point, as a religion. Now, they're not calling it a religion, but they're using all of the little sneaky tricks and techniques that a unethically manipulative religion or a cult would use on, unsuspecting followers to get them to support religion. So you're going to, instead of the cross or the Star of David, you're going to have the flag. You're going to go to the mandatory church school where the teacher, the priest, is going to teach you the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance. Yep. They're going to teach you the hymns of the Star-Spangled Banner. They're going to take you in middle school to Mecca, Washington, D.C., where they're going to take you into the Cathedral of the Capitol.
That's right.
It is going to be large and oversized to make you feel small and insignificant. And it looks like the Vatican for a reason.
That's right.
And they're going to take you into the temples along the Potomac, and they're going to show you the deities of Jefferson and Lincoln, and it's going to be very hushed and reverent. And they wear robes. The judiciary wears robes, vestments, and you have to follow the commandments, the laws, and certain. They're going to put you through an unethically manipulative scouting program where they're going to give kids awards for barfing back up what they're the lies that they're told about the legitimacy and the necessity of government. And they're going to engage in flag worship ceremonies, and they're going to shave the kids' heads and put them into the uniform, the single form conformity. And they're going to, just like other cults shave the head so that all the, the cult members are kind of compacted into this artificially created group dynamic.
Yep.
Well, these are just a few of the kind of unethically manipulative techniques that we expose in the book. And we also expose that all of these techniques are the exact same techniques that the Nazis, the Soviets, and the East Germans used.
Of all cults throughout history. All cults throughout history. They haven't had to modify their techniques because, unfortunately, even with all those examples, most people still cannot see the parallels that are drawn between religious institutions and government. I mean, you so eloquently just laid it out there. All of the different ways that government is just like any other religious organization and or cult. They have their own rituals, they have their own prayers, they have their own hymns, they have their own ceremonies, they have their own indoctrination techniques. But it's identical. They're identical techniques that have been used in cults throughout the centuries of humanity.
And you can really see it because I guarantee you that every single person listening to our voices right now has seen people that are religiously attached to the idea of being an American. They're not just because you're born in Compton, you don't have to be a Crip. Just because you're born in East LA, you don't have to be a Blood. Just because you're born on this side of the imaginary line doesn't really make you, an American. It's because this is an idea that's been indoctrinated into you. But every single person that's listening to us knows people that are religiously attached. They wear the garb, they wear red, white, and blue. They fly the flag off their vehicles. They fly the flag in their yards. They fly in the same way that Christians or other religions, publicly wear their religion on their sleeve. They're doing the exact same thing that religious people do. It's just that their religion is this indoctrinated religion of statism that is being mandatorily indoctrinated into the population in an unethically manipulative program that was first used by the Prussians to get people, to get people to conscript into the military easily and to get them to walk into cannon fire. And so now it's to get them to, semi-voluntarily turn over, half their income. So they're tax farming humanity, and they get away with it because the media system on every single channel is deceiving every single audience into every single thing that it's legitimate, that everybody does it. It's the elections are not rigged. It's, they're distracting and deceiving every audience. And so we do it in we expose how the magician does the trick in this picture book. It's really designed to wake up your friends and your family and your colleagues as to what's going on. Most people are visual learners, and if you tried to explain this to them, they may or may not listen to you. But when you put it out and they can see it with their own eyes, then boom, they come to that moment of insight. And so really what we're trying to do with the book is we're trying to wake people up. We're trying to take them from 0 to 60 by showing them in a way that can't be ignored, that it's so richly, visually engaging and compelling.
Yeah, I was going to say your book has such engaging photos and info pics in it. Like it's just such a visually striking manual, if you will. That's one of the things that I find so great about it. You could almost look at this like a more traditional coffee table style book, that's really rich in imagery and photos. But the way that you take people through the progression in the book, the symbolism is in your face. It's blatant, and this is designed for people to really connect the concepts visually with the imagery, almost like a slideshow, which is what I really appreciate about it. Just the richness of the visuals alone makes the book a must-have, in my opinion, for anybody's book collection.
So, the final thing on this that I'll say is, in a previous life, I used to help Fortune 500 companies learn at the speed of light. And so what we're doing in the book is we're really, we're leveraging the fact that most people are visual learners, right, so that we can take them from, 0 to 60 in a way that, kind of short, we're shortcutting them to understand how the game works in a way that they really can't ignore. And then because they see it with their own eyes, they come to that richer, understanding. And the final thing that we're doing with a lot of the media ownership charts and the media organization charts and the visualizations in the book is that visualization can make something that was invisible now visible. And so if you didn't know that the media was tied together in three companies, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission that has maneuvered their, members into dozens and dozens of ostensibly independent media companies. Like if you didn't understand that, and you tried to explain it to your friends, they may or may not believe you. But when you show them the visualization, then they can see how these networks have infused dozens and dozens of ostensibly, independent media companies. And then, Jeffrey Epstein was a member of all three of these organizations. And so it begins to kind of fill in the pieces of the puzzle. Oh, they can control all the different channels to sell something like 9/11 or the COVID or, the TARP or the bailouts or the stimulus or, whatever the scam of the day is, because they are controlling every screen, and they've maneuvered their members into these organizations.
That's right. Through simple centralization of power and influence by positioning point men. They already have the money, power, and influence to position point people into those positions. Non-elected positions where they could stay there for as long as they're required to fulfill the agenda. This is how people just don't understand how collusion like that works. They want to say, oh, this is conspiracy theory. This is a simple matter of business influence for these people. They're already incredibly wealthy and connected, and they're just centralizing their power through positioning point men and point women to centralize it quicker and faster and further.
But not only so with the visualization showing this domination of the media by these front organizations, that's one aspect. So they're promoting certain voices at the same time that they're de-indexing, demonetizing, shadow banning other voices. So all of that has now come out. It's come out in the Twitter files. It was essentially came out publicly when Facebook and deplatformed all of these people. But it wasn't just Facebook. It was, in the case of, the Free Thought Project, they got their Twitter canceled, they got a strike on their YouTube channel, and they got their Facebook page deleted all on the same day. So these companies are operating as a cartel to widely censor information like us.
Sure.
And then we're literally like this pirate broadcast, like the Nebuchadnezzar, in the movie The Matrix, trying to get this information out to, society, at the same time that we're being, censored and de-indexed and deplatformed on all of these different platforms that are being used by society. The dominant platforms, those are the ones that are being censored, de-indexed, and shadow banned.
The very platforms that the most people in the general population visit and utilize each week. They corralled people into these internet ghettos. As you said, this was a design, this was a plan from the inception of the internet. They knew that the internet could have potentially been used for the elevation of human consciousness. But as we know, the original internet network that came down to us, to the public, came from military background through the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, which obviously is a subsection of the Department of Defense, and highly connected to intelligence agencies, and obviously the dark occult orders that they intertwine and interconnect with at the highest levels of the hierarchy of power. And they actuaried this out. what was the danger of the explosion of consciousness that could happen by a release of an interconnected network of, computing and the ability to transfer information at the speed of light to each other, versus how would they be able to manage that flow of information and data through their big companies that had the most influence and power, that, as you said, could be given money to absorb smaller independent companies that could have potentially, invented and released more empowering technology and platforms and protocols, etc. But they actuaried that out so that they could figure out how they could have this network, use it as a mechanism of control, and prevent the flow of information through the type of censorship that they're doing now.
Absolutely. And you just made a really, really good point that I want to go back to, because you said that they corral people into these networks.
Yes.
And I want everybody that's listening to really think about that, and then take a look at, when you get an Android phone, it's already got Facebook and Twitter and all these things pre-populated on it, to where, they're already corralling you into their controlled social media hubs.
Yep.
When you sign up for a Twitter account, they immediately begin suggesting who to follow with you. When you have a Windows PC in the new kind of Windows 11, if you move your mouse over to the left-hand corner of the screen, they're going to go ahead and give you certain news stories that they want you, to read. When you go to, if you have a Facebook account, they're going to suggest people that you follow. If you're watching YouTube, they've got videos that are recommended for you by YouTube.
Yep.
And so they're going to try and either steer you into controlled opposition voices, or they're going to completely waste your time with things that you like, because the algorithm has already figured out like what you're interested in, whether you're interested in antique trains, or whether you're interested in militaria, or you're interested in World War II, or you're interested in whatever it is. They're going to be offering you things that aren't going to have any kind of content that would explain to you the way that the world really works, and how
Sure.
you're being tax farmed, and the illegitimacy of government. They're just going to steer you into kind of time wasters. I could go on and on and on, but I think the audience is getting it, that every single one of these platforms is corralling people, suggesting who to follow, at the same time that there have been caught, and it's proven, shadow banning, de-indexing, and deplatforming the authentic voices of the developing alternative media. And so if you don't understand that this is happening, if you don't understand that this is going on, you're not even in the game. You don't even know how the big game is played, if you don't understand that the big battle here is for your attention. It is an information war, and it's and we're fighting to get out like what's really going on in the face of an unbelievable global censorship and control of perception operation.
It's literally a huge engine-like machine that has a million tentacles attached to it that they can exert influence through at their whim. Unfortunately, I think that's why it's so important for people to understand communication and putting the word out there publicly and freely as the main solution. Becoming a communicator, exercising your innate natural right to being the press, not just absorbing information that members of the so-called press or media put out, but becoming a member of the media yourself as an independent individual. There's so much power in that I still don't think that our community in the freedom movement really deeply understands that as the solution. They are still looking to externalize their power to other people. instead of claiming it entirely themselves and using the power of their voice. They need to externalize their voice, not their power. They need to put their voice out there into the world for other people to hear and understand, which is, what I'm trying to assist people in, claiming that power and then using it with how to become the true media. But Etienne, I want to get into the article that we co-wrote as part of the new version of your book, the new release of it, because this starts to delve into some of the more esoteric areas of your research and understanding that I know that you wanted to get into today in the interview. And you yourself have really looked into, in a very deep way, the entire system of Freemasonry. And I know it's something that you've been vocal about and that you've talked about with many people in your work over the years. And you and I remember you wrote to me a couple years back and you said, I'd like you to contribute to the next edition of my book that's going to be coming out, and maybe giving your take, and we maybe co-write something about the general system of Freemasonry as it is operating in the world today. And this came out in the form of what we called an open letter, right? This was an open letter to Freemasons throughout the world, talking about what Freemasonry was originally designed to be versus what it has come down to us in the modern world. So I'd like you to start getting into that, because we could, touch on so many different points regarding this, maybe even talk about what we wrote in the open letter. But let me hear your take on why you originally got so deeply involved in this particular topic and wanted to do, sort of like a co-authoring project for your new book with me that manifested in the form of that open letter.
Sure. So this is in January we released the 5th edition of the book, and then this is the edition that the open letter appeared in. But in the previous editions, I identify Freemasonry as one of this intergenerational organized crime systems, what I call front groups and secret societies. And so the way that this intergenerational organized crime system has been projecting power is through organizations that we just discussed, like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum, that are very, publicly known. The members are publicly known, but the members are working together for mischief, and then those organizations allow them to have kind of large-scale meetings in secure facilities around the world on a regular basis, where the press can be given, hey, everybody's gonna get on board this COVID thing, or everybody's gonna get on board 9/11, or whatever it is, they can give their marching orders in these kind of large scale meetings. And then there's a number of kind of secret societies that some of which have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, where they were able to project power, in some cases internationally, nationally, and internationally. And so by hijacking in some cases hijacking, in some cases like Skull and Bones, they were founded by drug dealers. The Russell Trust that is was behind the opium, selling opium worldwide. Some of these organizations, they've taken over the intelligence agencies, they've maneuvered their members into politics and government, and that they've been able to really, network in local communities and on national and international scales to promote their own members into positions of power. And that's really one of the ways that they've been able to project power. In the United States, at least 17 U.S. presidents were openly associated with Freemasonry: George Washington, James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, James Polk, James Buchanan, Andrew Johnson, James Garfield, William McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, William Henry Taft, Warren Harding, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Gerald Ford. Ronald Reagan was honorary, and Bill Clinton was in kind of the teen group, the Order of Molay. And so that's one example of how that they've been able to maneuver their people into the presidency of the United States. But it's equally as nefarious in kind of, towns and, cities in the country where frequently the Masons are networking and organizing together to get their guy elected as the mayor and as the police chief or the sheriff, and typically you'll have all of the deputies. One of the things that we show in the open letter to Freemasonry, It's Time to Clean the House, is we show how almost a dozen state police forces have their own Masonic patches, so that they've got, there are so many members of the state police that they've actually got that are Masons, that they actually have their own Masonic patches. In the UK a couple of years ago, the UK has about 165,000 constables, bobbies, members of their law enforcement, and it was estimated that a sixth of them were in Freemasonry. So they're, promoting their own members, which creates a conflict of interest because, the membership has sworn an oath of allegiance to Freemasonry, but yet they're supposedly public servants that are protecting kind of the members of the public. And so you've got a real problem and an issue there. Now that's
if I may interject an addendum to that,
yeah.
They have not actually sworn an allegiance to the philosophy of Freemasonry. This is the problem, which we can get into discussing a little bit more in depth. They've sworn an allegiance to the lodge system that they're members of. This is why I highly recommend people who ever delve into any societies regarding knowledge, information, the occult, regardless of what it is, never ever to take any oath of allegiance to that body or that organization, because as we could talk about, with if we perhaps get into someone like William Morgan and his disappearance, back in the 1800s, etc. How the whole anti-Masonic party came up as a result of all of that, and other, areas of interest that we could get into discussing. It really comes down to that these people take very, very seriously the idea of allegiance. If you see, this is why I think the occult did not pursue me in any way. The dark occult, Satanism, etc. I never actually swore oaths of allegiance to them or their institutions. I was a peripheral member of some of these organizations and simply observed and somewhat participated in what they were doing, but it never became a blood oath. It never became an oath of deep allegiance and fidelity to them. They take that extraordinarily seriously. And again, laying this out, you are not, if you do swear an oath like that, you are not swearing an oath to the philosophy, to the ideology, to what the principles that are supposed to be being taught by these institutions or brotherhoods or fraternities. You are swearing an oath to them, to their membership, to the institution and the people who are a part of it. And they take that extremely seriously, like a mafia does. They're not playing games when it comes to that. So when people do that, I feel that that's when they're actually bonding themselves to them. That is their religious belief, is you don't truly connect and bond to them in a blood fraternity or brotherhood until that oath is sworn. And once that happens, that's when you're in over your head, you're in up to your neck or over your head. You're in it so deep that they're not going to allow you to easily extract yourself from it.
And there is this degree system where you're evaluated at every step along the way. You're tested, and so they're able to kind of bubble up the people that are going to go along with it 100%. They're able to screen out the ones that don't.
It's a vetting system. That's a system of vetting. Yes.
It's a system of vetting, and then that they're able to project power nationally and internationally through these lodge systems. Now, so that's one of the things that, that's one of the secret societies that we identified as being, part of it. And I think we're dead on, because, there's a lot of evidence throughout history that that certain lodges. So, and we're not, I don't want to give away the point of our letter before we get to it, but I'll just go ahead and say, not all Masons are in on it, and not all lodges are in on it.
Correct.
And so it really has been, kind of lodge by lodge, but in some cases, it's just a kind of an old boys network, and they're doing good deeds and charity in the community. And then there's, lodges like the P2 Lodge in Italy that has, that had, hundreds of people that, including the connected to the mafia, connected to, to the military, the heads of the 3 Italian secret services, future Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi,
the Vatican, of course.
The Vatican, Victor Emmanuel, the son of the last Italian king. Go on, and according to
bankers like Calvi, of course, journalists, yeah.
But so once you have that kind of network in place, in the fall of 1969, General Alexander Haig, who was then Supreme Commander of NATO in Europe, and Henry Kissinger, who was the National Security Advisor, authorized them to recruit 400 Italian and NATO officers within that lodge. And so then, because you've got that system in place, it can be hijacked and used for nefarious purposes.
Yep.
And so the fact that it exists at all, means that it's available to be hijacked. And so
this is the danger. It's the danger of creating an organization that is based in a hierarchical network with secrecy as one of its main characteristics. This is why I don't call myself an occultist, even though I do consider myself an occultist. I consider myself a de-occultist, somebody who is unhiding the occult knowledge, not just gathering it and trying to continue to keep it secret. There's a huge difference between learning what the actual philosophy, the actual principles, the actual psychology of the occult actually is, and then deciding what you're going to do with it. Are you going to teach and uplift humanity and try to uplift human consciousness, or are you going to just hold that to yourself and say, I'm going to use this for my own purposes and my own benefit? Service to self instead of service to others, and ultimately instead of service to the truth and service to ending the human condition of slavery. So it's like, this is what we tried to set out to do in this open letter. We're not telling people that all Freemasonry is bad or that all Freemasons are bad. That's number one. The first thing is, people have to see this from a more mature and multi-dimensional perspective instead of a unidimensional, childish perspective. Everybody out there who's going, all Freemasonry's bad and evil, all Freemasons are bad. Some of the best people I know are Freemasons. Some of the most honest, intelligent, and moral people I know are Freemasons. Friends of mine, personal friends of mine, are Freemasons. It is not all Masons. It is not just the Masons doing this, number one. It's not just being done through the Masonic Lodge system. It's being done through a network, a worldwide network of totally disparate yet interconnected tentacles. You have to realize it's a complex web, interconnected web of organizations and institutions. This is not something like where they just set everybody up in one room or in one building or in one office space. They're not that stupid. They're much, much, much more intelligent than that, and they're doing things by, again, positioning people within institutional bodies that have a lot of power and influence in our society and are very connected and contain a level of secrecy. secrecy, like any corporation does. Intellectual property being prized in the whole corporate environment. Well, knowledge about the human psyche, knowledge about the laws of the universe, these are prized in fraternal brotherhoods and secret societies and occult orders. It's no different than how a corporate structure works through hierarchy and compartmentalization. That in and of itself is the inherent danger of creating and then having other people join into a lodge system. This is why I've cautioned against the idea of joining up with them in a lodge system. People say, I'm going to go into it just to get the knowledge. Then they find themselves in a viper's den, so to speak. People say, I want the tactical training that the military will offer me. Then they find themselves, in an operation where, for their own survival, because they've been put in such a precarious position, they find themselves killing people in other countries in an aggressive capacity. It's being street smart to the level of not placing oneself in that position where there's a compromised network already in existence to begin with. And it's the idea you're not going to go in there and clean that institutional rot out yourself. You don't need to do it that way. You need to learn the principles that were the original intent of those institutions before they rotted from the inside through corruption, through the hunger for power and secrecy and, centralization of power, even more through these institutions. So this is what we set out to do, recognizing this and trying to explain it to people from a more mature, multidimensional approach instead of looking at it like, all Freemasons are bad guys. We wanted to structure a letter to the worldwide institution of Freemasonry in an open capacity, saying, we are aware of these issues. We are aware that this is not the original intent of your fraternity. This is not the original intent of the very philosophy of Freemasonry itself. We see the purity of that as a good thing. For anybody not understanding this, Freemasonry is the original intent is a system of morality that is taught through symbol and allegory. And that is what it is. It's there to teach natural law and objective morality to people. A lot of Freemasons don't know that, first of all. There's plenty of Freemasons out there that could not explain that don't even really truly know that that's the purpose of the philosophy of Freemasonry, of the original occult tradition of teaching this in an occult capacity, in an occult way. They really believe, this is just some old boys club of networking, get together with people, one hand washes the other, we all do favors for each other, we all gain some more power and influence, and powerful and connected friends. That is not the intent of Freemasonry. The intent of Freemasonry is to teach true morality under natural law to humanity, and to put that out there in a wide way so that it becomes common sense and we elevate the human consciousness out of the condition of slavery. That's what Freemasonry is originally designed to do, as are all the traditional occult systems of occult teachings within the mystery traditions. So we wanted to explain that out in the open and say it's not our intent to attack the foundations of the principles that are supposed to be being taught through this system, but we are saying that there is rot from the inside. There is corruption, there is decay, there is moral decay, there is more rot. The lodge systems are not necessarily doing what their original charge is for them to be doing, which is teaching that morality to human beings. And so, I'll let you continue describing what we drafted in this edition of the book.
Well, first of all, I want to go back and kind of echo something you said, that this rot and decay goes back, a very, very long time, especially in the United States.
Yes.
Yeah, and so so we have a Substack at ArtOfLiberty.substack.com, and on that Substack, the current one is the Shady History of the Constitution. And in that article at artofliberty.substack.com, I break down, a lot of people don't realize, but, the delegates that assembled in Philadelphia in May of 1787, they weren't there to create a constitution. They were there to amend the Articles of Confederation.
Right.
And it wasn't the famous revolutionaries. Jefferson and Adams were in Europe. Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, and Chris Gadsden were not chosen.
Right.
Patrick Henry
had
refused.
Gathered, yes.
Yeah. He refused to participate outright, claiming he smelt a rat.
Yep.
They chose 74 delegates. 19 refused or didn't attend. Out of the 55 who actually showed up, 41 were politicians, 34 were lawyers, 11 were admitted Freemasons, and 2 more would join lodges after the convention, and over a dozen more were suspected of being Freemasons.
Interesting.
According to Maryland delegate James McHenry, at least 21 of the 55 delegates favored some sort of monarchy. So it wasn't, there wasn't any kind of ideologic purity towards freedom in these people that called this convention and then hijacked it and produced an unauthorized, replacement. The shady history of the Constitution is another one of the one pagers that have been excerpted from the book. But I've got another one called the Pledge of the Shady History of the Pledge of Allegiance. And the original Pledge of Allegiance was essentially the product of a media operation run by Freemasons that got the federal U.S. flag into classrooms where it had never been before, and then got everybody doing this robotic oath and salute and everything like that. And so it's attributed to staff writer and Freemason Francis Bellamy. While the Socialist Bellamy salute, so a lot of people don't understand, but what before we put our hands over the heart, some people put their hands over their hearts and do the Pledge of Allegiance. It used to be a military salute that started with a military salute, and it said, "I pledge allegiance to the flag." And when you said flag, you extended your hand outward and upward. The kids, so it was essentially the Hitler, the Hitler salute, the Heil Hitler salute started out in the United States as the Bellamy salute. We did it for over a decade before the Nazis adopted it from us. But that was our salute, and it was both the salute and the pledge came out of this media operation run by Freemasons. The pledge is credited to a fellow Freemason, James Upham, who was a member of the staff there, and who assigned the writing of the pledge to Bellamy. Francis Bellamy's cousin, Edward Bellamy, was the son of a Freemason. He was the author of an 1888 international bestseller advocating military socialism called Looking Backwards from 2000 to 1887, called The Bible of National Socialism. So you've got Masons pushing, kind of government 2.0 or 1.5 on the population. We're going to get socialism in. We're going to have, obedience. We're going to get the federal flag into the schools. We're going to push a more, nationalization. Now, Freemasonry fell out of favor because in 1826, you mentioned it earlier, a man named William Morgan, who had infiltrated Masonic meetings and kind of got some of the secrets of Masonry, was going to join forces with a publisher named David Miller, and they were going to release a book exposing the inner workings of Freemasonry. Right. And so the Masons had them arrested. Okay, this is the local sheriff was supposedly in cahoots, and they actually had these guys arrested ASAP to shut them up, and then the Masons bailed them out on September 11th, 1826. And then they disappeared, and so the backlash from that. Yeah,
allegedly they were taken on a boat and allegedly cast overboard and drowned. That's not confirmed, but that's what's suspected, since Morgan was never seen again after that. But just to reiterate, he actually, upon going in to quote unquote infiltrate some of the lodges in that region of the country, he did swear oaths of allegiance to gain their trust and favor. Again, that it's my contention they take this seriously above all else. If you do not do that, you insulate yourself. If you say, my only oath of allegiance is to the God of creation and to truth itself, and I don't swear oaths of allegiance to worldly institutions or other human beings, they're not going to break their religious belief system just to kill you. But if you swear oaths of allegiance to them, they take that oath of fidelity above all else. They take it very, very, very seriously. So I think that's part of what insulates people from having a hit or a contract put out on them to be assassinated, is whatever you do, even if you're going to try to join up in any of these fraternal orders or brotherhoods or occult societies just to see what goes on the inside or to gain some insider knowledge, never swear an oath of allegiance to them or their institution. I'm just saying that is what they seems to be the line that if you do that, then cross it, they come for you. They don't play games when it comes to that.
It's just like the mafia. And so it was recognized as the mafia back then. And so based off of that and their infiltration into politics, and especially local politics, the country there was a tremendous anti-Masonic feeling and sentiment in the country. And so in 1828, the U.S.'s first third party was the anti-Masonic party.
That's correct.
A lot of people don't realize that the first third party in the United States was the anti-Masonic party.
That's right.
And they were trying to get the Masons out of politics. And it wasn't just in the United States that people wanted the Masons out of politics. I mentioned Italy. In Spain, Franco, said, that everything wrong with Spain could be explained in two words: Masonry and communism. And he threw the Masons out of Spain, and a lot of them were rounded up and killed in Spain. And so the Roman Catholic Church has prohibited its members from joining Masonic organizations for political as well as religious reasons. And until 1983, the penalty for Catholics who joined Masonry was excommunication. And so it goes on and on. In the United States, I'm going to just kind of read another quote from Government: The Biggest Scam in History Exposed. But Freemason, this is, they were widely suspected in being involved in the plot to kill Kennedy, and that there was a lot of aspects of Dealey Plaza that kind of corresponded with Masonic symbolism. And so,
without a doubt, tons of it, as a matter of fact, yes.
Tons of it, and that's in a book called Kill King 33, which breaks it all down. But this is a quote from Kill King 33. Freemason Lyndon Johnson appointed Freemason Earl Warren to investigate the death of John F. Kennedy. Mason and member of the 33rd degree Gerald R. Ford was instrumental in suppressing what little evidence of a conspiratorial nature reached the commission. Responsible for supplying information to the commission was Mason, FBI director and member of the 33rd degree J. Edgar Hoover, and former CIA director and Mason Allen Dulles was responsible for most of his agency's data supplied to the panel. So now you've got the vice president. You've got Gerald R. Ford, who would be appointed to vice president, the only president that wasn't actually elected to anything, because he was appointed to be vice president, and then he was made president after, later on. But you've got the FBI director, the CIA director, and you've got Earl Warren, who was a member of the Supreme Court, are all involved in the investigation of what really happened with JFK. And I think that most people, I think I've seen, most polls, know that the overwhelming majority of people don't believe the original story and suspect that there was, foul play involved in that. And so who's covering that up? All of these very, very high level Masons. And so these are just some of the reasons why people don't trust the Masons. Sure. Now,
and that's a very short list. There's a lot more. It goes on and on and on. And this is what we were basically saying. Like, this is pretty much out there in the general population's mindset, in the general understanding by most people that it's distrusted, and perhaps that's very deliberately orchestrated. Perhaps they wanted to paint that picture of this is an institution to be distrusted because they don't want people really arriving at the core philosophical understanding of the tradition. So, this is what we tried to do in the open letter. We're laying it out that you guys have a history of problems within your house. You have not really fully addressed that and made the public want to trust you again. Perhaps if you fully worked on cleaning up the lodge system and making it a shining example of what this fraternal brotherhood is supposed to be doing, and then made the public understand that from a more common sense point of view without necessarily having to immediately initiate them, but just explaining the generalities, the principles of Freemasonry that you're trying to convey, which is morality, which is an objective understanding of the difference between right and wrong, because that's what it really is supposed to be doing. But how many lodge systems are doing that? I attend all kinds of, meetings, gatherings, meetups, and I listen for one word. I always listen to people's speeches. I listen for one word being conveyed, and I count how many times it's said, and that is the word morality. If I go to a place where there's going to be 20 public speakers, 10 public speakers, whatever, I'm listening. How much are they talking about how deeply interconnected morality is with human freedom? And I'm just listening and counting the words morality. And you know what the number that is almost always the end total, the final toll, the final totaled number of how many times the word morality is spoken? A big goose egg, absolute zero. Yep. So that tells me all that you kind of need to know about where people's mindset is at and what they truly understand about what's really important when it comes to the conveyance of moral principles, what they think the solution is. So what we were asking in this letter is if you clean up your own lodge and make it an example of what the original intent of this tradition was supposed to be, then you can really be doing the work that was what this entire institution was designed to be from the beginning. It was not meant to be a system that would be infiltrated by evil people and used through its inherent secrecy to be a mechanism of further continuance and of control in our society, and consolidating and centralizing power even more and enslaving humanity. So I think that what we did, we hit upon something that was really very powerful and worded in a very precise and concise way over only a couple of pages of the book, where we made that appeal to people. So I want you to give your take on how you think it came out in general.
I agree. I'd like to read it. It's not that long, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it.
Sure, go right ahead. Absolutely.
All right. An open letter to Freemasonry. It's time to clean the lodge. While this book identifies Freemasonry as one of intergenerational organized crime, secret societies, and front groups, we're not claiming that every Freemason is an unindicted suspect. To the contrary, we believe many prominent Masons have attempted to stay true to the original intent of the craft, both in antiquity and modern times. However, we are sending this communication to express the unfortunate reality that the overwhelming majority of the modern Freemasonic lodge system have veered significantly off course, with many, in fact, becoming the antithesis of what Freemasonry should convey and project. Some of the most respected and learned Freemasons throughout time have accurately referred to Freemasonry as a symbol of morality, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. We believe that this is what the esoteric form of Freemasonry has attempted to convey to its members and students from inception. The essence of Freemasonry is and always has been to communicate to its adherents first principles, objective morality, and natural law, the great work. Sadly, this overarching main tenet has been largely lost in the modern lodge system and replaced by a networking structure which, far more often than not, is manipulated by some members for self-gratification and financial enrichment, leaving the moral and spiritual aspects of Freemasonry literally at the door. Our world is currently in a moral crisis of incredible proportions. Freemasonry can and should be acting as a munificent force for positive change during these difficult times. Its power to do this lies in its ability to morally educate and uplift those who enter its ranks. That is, if and only if the craft itself stays true to its original intent and mission. If the degradation of modern lodges continues unabated, Freemasonry will be displaced from its role as a potential positive transformer of our society and will increasingly be perceived by many as a system that promotes selfish interests and an institution that may even represent potential harm to society as a whole. We understand the allure of electing and controlling the mayor, the sheriff, the police chief, and the city council, and the power that the lodge has to finance and promote its own members. We understand the power of an international brotherhood, sworn to secrecy, evaluated by degree, working together and able to exercise influence in almost every country, state, city, and town. We humbly suggest Freemasonry cast that ring into the fire, for it corrupts and it embarrasses all that it touches. Our communication is an outreach effort to those who still care deeply about Freemasonry's ability to grow in its most important role as a teacher of morality. If the lodge system cleans its own house and has the potential to reemerge in its fullness as a positive influence in the making of its members into better human beings. This is the goal that has been largely forgotten by the majority of lodge leaders today. If Freemasons make a concerted effort to restore and revitalize the original moral intent of this institution, it can cleanse itself of the negative influences that have led it astray and become what it was always intended to be, a system of spiritual advancement leading to a free and better world. With great respect to our friends in Masonry, Mark Passio and Etienne de la Boetie squared.
That is powerful. I'm choked up. That's so powerfully constructed by us. I'm very, very proud of the job we did in drafting that open letter, and I'm really glad that you did suggest reading it live on the air today, because that's great that we got that on video for posterity. I think that says it all. That really does say it all regarding, what has become regarding the modern lodge system, versus if the people who are still within that institution who really care and decide to transform it for the better and clean that house, what it has the potential to do in our world. So, I mean, that's just fantastic, and I'm honored that not only that you asked me to help draft that open letter with you, but that you published it in the new edition of your book. And I hope more people hear it, read it, and take it very seriously, and perhaps get it to the right people.
Well, I'm going to publish it for free at artofliberty.substack.com in the next day. So within one day, this will be up at artofliberty.substack.com. And I hope that, people forward this to the Masons that they know and say, hey, it's our understanding that there's an effort, afoot to try and help you guys clean up your own house.
That's right.
And so it will be at artofliberty.substack.com.
Before we go to the phones, because I know people are going to have some questions about all of the great knowledge that you laid out here and talked about, Etienne, I just want to say that my offer is still on the table for what it's worth. And some people don't quite take this seriously, but I never intended this to be tongue-in-cheek. It was always a very serious offer. I feel that without the taking of loyalty oaths, if worshipful masters who are the head of their individual lodge systems within the Freemasonic, institution, if they wanted to appoint someone like myself or you, Etienne, to an honorary 33rd degree membership, then I would be willing to go to whatever lodge systems I can within my area and the whole tri-state area perhaps, and teach the true esoteric principles and the decoding of some of the symbols and allegories, just as I did here in earlier episodes of What on Earth is Happening, and break that material out to people who have a desire for it and a hunger to learn it. And I would take that very seriously. It would not be done as some just publicity stunt. And I would take my knowledge from the original teachings of Freemasonry and then disseminate it throughout the lodge systems to help grow that very dynamic that we're talking about, that what the original intent of the craft is supposed to be about, and teaching morality to others. I would give of my time and energy and knowledge to help really imbue that into the modern lodge system. I have no problem if there's a genuine effort to attempt to do that. Once again, I would not take oaths to the actual fraternity. I would not take oaths to the people. I would not take any oaths to the actual lodges. That would have to be, totally precluded from, the effort of doing that. But if I was given, such as someone like Manly P. Hall was given, an honorary 33rd degree, I would definitely work with lodges in my area to, again, clean up their houses and really bring the true esoteric nature of the teachings to their members. So it's still out on the table. That's an open offer, but a person who is the worshipful master of their lodge system would have to work to make that happen, to attempt, based on the information that I have already put out regarding Freemasonry and what I have taught in relation to it, to make that situation occur, which would not be a small order. Obviously, a lot of strings would have to be pulled. But again, it was done for Manly P. Hall. It could be done for someone in the modern day. If someone wanted it badly enough and wanted to make it happen because they felt that, I would take that job seriously and do it seriously, that offer is open-ended and still on the table and was never tongue-in-cheek. That was always a very serious offer. So I just wanted to reiterate it here in a serious capacity today. So Etienne, what do you think? We go to the phones for the last 22 minutes or so and take some calls?
Let's do it.
Excellent. All right, let's see who's hanging on the line here. Let's hear from Darren. Darren, you are live on What on Earth is Happening with my special guest, Etienne de la Boetie Squared. Darren, you can unmute yourself and pose your question or comment. You're unmuted from the server.
Sorry about that.
There you go, no problem.
Can you hear me, Mark?
Yes, we can.
Okay. doing some dishes. You kind of caught me by surprise.
No problem.
But well, I want to thank you guys for everything you do. I recently shared your duress, dissonance, and deadly force presentation with a friend. And I asked him what he thought the next day, and he said, "Well, I didn't really finish it." I'm like, "Why?" He's like, "Well, if he had been black, then maybe I would listen." I'm like,
amazing,
bro, you're a victim of mind control. If you can't listen to truth because of the color of the skin,
could you imagine? Could you imagine? I mean, that would be like me saying, well, if an Asian person or something like that were to speak something, that I'm going to dismiss it just because of the geographic region of the world that they're from. I mean, I can't even imagine that kind of thinking is still prevalent at all in the modern world. Etienne, your take on... This
guy is a coworker of mine.
Yeah, well,
I drive him to work.
Let's let Etienne give his take on that dynamic. This dynamic of just dismissing information because of cultural background or skin color or gender or whatever. I mean, could you even imagine that there's any consciousness out there that is still looking at things from this low-level perspective? I mean, we know that there is, but I mean, your take on that in general.
Well, that's obviously a travesty, and I don't know the specific content of the presentation, but what I found is that when somebody doesn't finish something, that usually the reason is, something, well known in psychology known as cognitive dissonance, where that new information is causing pain. And that pain may be because that person has proudly taught to others the opposing view, that person is, in the case of statism, when you expose this, a lot of people, they've woven that into their life. They've woven that statism. And so that pain will even prohibit them from even looking at evidence, even if it's obviously true, because of that psychological pain. And it's a well-known condition called cognitive dissonance.
That's right. Just to speak to that for one moment, I've heard the dynamic of, if anybody even mentions the word slavery and they're not black, they're not qualified to speak on it. I mean, this is pure nonsense, quite frankly. And that's not in any way a racist statement. I mean, knowledge is knowledge. The truth is the truth. The truth is that which occurred. If somebody has knowledge on a topic, they are qualified to speak upon it. Imagine, first of all, people not understanding that chattel slavery was not just done to African Americans in the past. I mean, look at the Irish. Yep. By genetic lineage, I'm 1/4 Irish. Most people would think of me as purely Italian, but I'm actually 75% Italian and 1/4 Irish. So, can I speak on chattel slavery because of the Irish in my blood and genetics? You talk about chattel slavery happening with, white people throughout the world. Look at the Irish in the past. But it's neither here nor there. I'm not talking about it from a perspective of skin or genetic lineage or nationality or geographic region of a people. It's a moral principle that it's morally wrong regardless of who it is done to or toward. I mean, how could someone not be able to distinguish and delineate the concept, the principle? That's why I'm saying it doesn't matter who says something. If it's true, it's true. If it's false, it's false. We have to stop thinking according to these preconditioned, prejudging. That's what prejudice means. You're judging something before you're following it fully through from a psychological perspective and a perspective of veracity of whether it is true or not. So, I would ask that individual to consider things along that basis, that this has zero to do with skin color, genetics, nationality. All of those things are totally meaningless. What's the only thing that is of any significance and meaning is whether you truly understand moral principles and the moral wrongness of slavery throughout human history. And that qualifies, if someone understands that, it qualifies anyone, regardless of their skin color or genetics, to speak on the topic. So thank you
Mark,
so much for that. Yeah, sure.
If I may just make one suggestion. There is a rite of masonry. It admits women. It's co-masonry. It's called Le Droit Humain, the human right.
Okay.
And I know they have lodges in the Detroit area.
I've heard about this becoming more popular recently. Yes.
Yeah, they're part of the Grand Orient of France. So I think they're like more liberal. I don't know anything about them. I'm not recommending them, but I'm saying maybe look into that.
I absolutely will, because I know there's a growing movement to admit everyone, regardless of gender, into the Freemasonic lodge system, and I agree that should happen. If the person wants to go into the lodge system, they should not be rejected based on, you know, their sex. That should be obvious as well in today's day and age, you know. So yeah, thank you for those points, Darren. Great points and comments brought up. I thank you for that. Let's see who else is holding on the line here. Let's hear from Alan. Alan, you are live on What on Earth is Happening with my special guest, Etienne de la Boetie.
Hey, hopefully this is not too bad audio. I was going right to my Bluetooth headset as you were going to me.
No, so. You're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. So this Freemason thing, to me, it would almost be my opinion, it would almost be an insult for them to give you a 33-degree, some kind of title, right, in their organization, which to me is a terrorist group. I mean, they swear everybody to secrecy and they will kill you. I mean, it is a terrorist organization. Well, again, that is like the definition.
Just to correct you, they offer you to take an oath of allegiance. One does not have to accept that offer. You could vocally proclaim, I do not take oaths of allegiance to human beings. I only take oaths of allegiance to the creator of the universe, to the truth, to principles, and they will, based on the lodge and the people who are running it, they will either, accept or reject that and allow you to continue, or if they're truly corrupted, they will probably say that you can't continue within that lodge system. But there is no actual tenet that they must not allow you to continue if you don't take oaths to them. That should be understood. It would depend on the lodge and the people who are running it.
Okay, that does clarify a little bit better, because I was thinking, Mark Passio is not 33 degrees. He's beyond that. He's in the hundreds. I don't know how far it goes. I know it goes in the hundreds. I want to say, I mean, it's a specific number, obviously. Who knows? I mean, at this point. But does that even matter? And the true principles of natural law is all that really matters. Well, I totally get your point.
Let me respond to your comment and then get Etienne's take on that. So Etienne, he's saying that basically, me even going into that system to try to morally educate would almost be like an insult to myself. I don't particularly agree with that. The gentleman is definitely entitled to his opinion regarding that. But it's like people who say that I should not go and teach in the Libertarian Party. Like, I just spoke at 2 Libertarian state conventions, which I wasn't even planning on doing. Like, the people came out of the woodwork and offered me to speak at events like that. And I'm like, you know what? This is an opportunity for moral education to members of the public who are still in a minarchist mindset. And I'm like, okay, why not? I mean, I think that's really actually kind of what should be being done, where we should project our voice into that dynamic of people who aren't all the way there yet. Etienne, your take on reaching out to people from a moral perspective who, again, may have a little bit of a baseline understanding of things, but we obviously need to take them all the way.
Well, I actually interpreted Alan's comment as saying that if they gave you an honorary 33 degree, that it would be an insult because you would be deserving of something, that the knowledge that you bring to the table would be deserving of something, much higher, understood. A much higher degree.
Right.
And so I think he was commenting, and for Masons that are going to undoubtedly listen to this because of the open letter, I would just really encourage, anybody that's thinking about that to take a look at the work you've done on natural law and take a look at some of the scholarship that you've produced to really understand the wealth of information that you're bringing to the table and would be able to bring to Masonry in a lot of cases, much deeper and richer than the historian of the lodge, or that is being taught at the lodge right now. And so I hope that some lodges take you up on it, and you're able to really bring that information to them in a really powerful way.
It would be very interesting work and a very interesting social dynamic. I would definitely, again, welcome it, take it seriously. I think it would be something that I would find a lot of value in doing. And I don't say that about many things, to be quite honest. That would be something that I would definitely welcome. But we'll see. Maybe it'll manifest. Maybe it never will. But you know what? I'm putting the intention out there and asking, and that's the first step of anything. So let's see who else is holding on the line. Let's hear from...
Catherine's got her hand up.
Okay, let's hear from Catherine. Why not? Cat Waters of One Great Work Network, you're live on What on Earth is Happening with my special guest, Etienne de la Boetie squared.
Oh, hey, Mark.
Hey.
Hi, Etienne. Sorry if I'm not saying your name right. I have a couple of points I was going to say.
Sure.
But something that you said more recent, I think I'm just going to focus on that. I had an idea from things that you guys were saying a bit ago. Mm-hmm. But what you were just saying about, people who can, you were talking about race or sex, and it doesn't matter, people can have knowledge. It doesn't matter what sex they are or age, race or something like that. But I just wanted to reply and say that it's usually leverage in this area. People who don't have leverage usually are the ones who don't get heard. That's the kind of a society that we live in.
Sure.
Is, the more vulnerable a person is, no matter how right they are, no matter how they've seen, lived, witnessed something, they're usually, pardon me, all of a sudden I'm getting something in my throat.
That's all right. Take a drink and then continue. No problem.
Oh my goodness. See, so yeah, pretty much that was what I wanted to say.
It's definitely true that, influence plays a huge factor, and connectedness, and, how well connected someone is. It's often who you know. It's often, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Etienne, you could, yes, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I just, I got my voice back.
Mm-hmm.
I took a sip of water.
Sure.
So, I always have to talk about child abuse and the family system, and the reason why we have such a pandemic of child abuse and now, child sexual abuse going on is for that exact reason. The more vulnerable you are, that's it. It doesn't, they just don't get regarded the slightest.
And children, especially children who have been abandoned in many cases by their parents, are the most vulnerable. So Etienne, your take on the idea of the people who really already aren't in a position of societal influence, they could be, pushed to the wayside regarding, being heard, being able to exert their, influence in society, and how that might even play into, systems such as fraternal orders and brotherhoods such as Freemasonry.
Well, I agree with that completely, but I think that the bigger issue is it's not just the disenfranchised. It's everybody in society is having their voice minimized because an intergenerational organized crime system is cheating.
That's right.
They've bought up the world with the little paper tickets. It's kind of bank. One of the at the kind of at the top of the pyramid are these bankers that are using fractional reserve banking to create money out of thin air.
Yep.
They're taking these little paper tickets and digital dollars, and they're buying up everything that could be bought up, starting with the media, so that the media doesn't tell society what's going on. And so instead of having an honest, organic conversation the way the internet could be, and that is going on in the sense of the people that understand where to look and where to go and how the system works and how the magician, does the trick.
Right.
But for a most part, most people, they just don't realize how easy it is for this intergenerational organized crime system to hijack and control the flow of information in society, not just on the internet, but freedom of press.
That's right.
Freedom of the press. One of the there's a famous quote that said, really only applies to people that own a press, and so that if they're cheating and they're buying up the means to communicate to ensure that nobody understands what's going on, we're all being disenfranchised.
That's right.
And it doesn't cost that much money. The final thing that I would say is, by my estimate, it probably costs them, a couple $100 billion a year to buy up and control the media, because they got to keep buying, new platforms that get to new eyeballs, and then they've got to, finance some that are like losing money, just because, we'll go ahead and lose money just to be able to, control, somebody else from not being able to do it.
To keep the floodgates from opening up in other areas. Exactly.
Exactly. But if you're stealing trillions of dollars, and you're stealing it through, handing trillions of dollars to private banks through the bailout, the stimulus, the TARP, the TALF, if you're stealing it through military industrial complex fraud for weapon systems that we don't need to fight wars based on lies and manufactured intelligence, if you're stealing it through unneeded vaccines being forced upon the population by government edict and to go to the mandatory, school system, and, if you're stealing it through, ethanol subsidies, and you're stealing it through, all of these different ways through which, this organized crime stealing system is stealing, society's, the money of people that have earned it and saved it, then it doesn't cost you anything to control the media. It's the marketing budget.
Yeah, it's chump change.
Mice nuts. Yeah. On Wall Street, we called it mice nuts.
Yeah.
It's mice nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people who are just way, they're not even on that totem pole of financial power, do not understand the colossal nature of that flow that they have, and how easy it is for them. It's like throwing a couple of pennies on the counter, on the table. It's nothing to them, Yep,
it's nothing.
Yep.
It might as well be free.
That's right. And most people will just go along with it for that money, because that's a ton of money to them, that they're getting in the form of a paycheck to just do what they're told. Let's hear from Kat. Thank you so much for your comment on that. Let's hear from the newest member of One Great Work Network, Jackie. Jackie Krasna, you're live on What on Earth is Happening with my special guest, Etienne de la Boetie Squared.
Hi, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad.
Well, you were talking about not joining orders or like taking an oath. Mm-hmm. And recently I was wanting to join Builders of the Adytum. I don't know if you're familiar, but
I am
it's
actually
a mystery
not, no.
school. So it's a mystery school that teaches tarot and Kabbalah.
Interesting.
And they're based in LA. Yeah, and I really love the teachings of Paul Foster Case that founded.
Yes. Yeah, great books that he's written, especially on Rosicrucianism, actually, was one of his fortes of, writing about that particular mystery tradition.
Yeah, and I was kind of, I got their, initiation oath paper, mm-hmm. and I told them I wanted to, back out of it because mm-hmm. I wasn't sure. But I don't know, it says the first part of it is you're going to apply yourself to learning the teachings of ageless wisdom, mm-hmm. which I'm on board with that. But the second part is you can teach the material in your own words, but you can't hand out their booklets.
That's another big one. A lot of them keep their actual published material very tight to the chest and don't want you using that in any other capacity except the way that they tell you that you can. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. The title card just came down. Thank you so much to my special guest, Etienne de la Boetie Squared. Phenomenal information. Thank you so much for sharing that open letter to Freemasonry that was published in your new book. Check him out at government-scam.com. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this week. We'll see you right here next week on What on Earth is Happening. And remember, government is slavery. Have a good one.